All right. I'm
Oh,
here
I
with
gotta hit that.
Mr. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. And when you push record, this thing like pops up. You
Oh,
gotta click it. Yeah.
okay. Oh, yeah. I'm here with Mr. Joseph Sciambra. I am saying that right, right?
Mm,
I'm
very
I'm
good.
terrible with names.
No, you're very
Um,
good. No,
so
no,
uh
good.
how's it? I'm glad to have you here, man. It's
Thank you.
been
Thank
something
you.
I've been looking forward to.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yes.
no doubt, no doubt. Um, First thing I want to start with is your story, and a lot of my listeners aren't going to know who you are, but I think you have a very, very original story. Maybe not so original, but at least the way you tell it and the way you've come out of it, and and turned your life around, I think is something worth looking at and talking about. So if you would just
Sure.
shed some light on who you are, where you came from, and how you got here.
Sure. You want the full version, abbreviated version, abridged version?
You can go
I
as full
uh,
as you're comfortable with going, man.
okay.
I'm here.
Okay. Okay. Pull the plug if it gets too long. And was born and raised in San Francisco, the Bay Area, 1969. That was an interesting year. I always tell people that was Woodstock.
Yeah.
That was that was also the Manson murders.
Oh,
And what else was that year? 16. Oh, the Apollo 11 moon landing. So yeah, it's an interesting year. Um, I mean, if you look at San Francisco in the 60s, that was the hippie, flower power era. So I grew up, mainly in the 70s, and it's interesting, the whole area of Berkeley and the city, and very, very progressive, very, liberal. I didn't grow up in a conservative environment at all. Although, my dad, God rest his soul, he was an immigrant from Sicily. I'd say my dad was more conservative. But and I grew up in the Catholic Church. I went in Catholic schools from, kindergarten all the way through. And but the Catholic Church in that time was pretty liberal. The the I wasn't taught by nuns, like people have imagination that there were nuns and stuff. There were sisters, but at that time they didn't wear habits, and but it was pretty progressive. We sang, like, I always tell people, we sang Simon and Garfunkel in church, things like that. And uh so I didn't grow up. I didn't, you would think, well, my parents, God bless them, they would think, after paying all that money to educate me in Catholic schools, that I would have learned something, but I really didn't have much of a foundation in in anything, the Bible or Catholic traditions or anything. It was a lot of, I mean, I don't remember it when I was a little kid. I remember it very well in, like, middle school and high school. It was a lot of social justice stuff. And at that time, it was a lot of liberation theology. I remember that very, very well. And so when I got out of high school, I was really not interested in religion. Um, at least in terms of, like, Catholicism, I didn't have any in it. I actually probably didn't have much of an interest in it at all. Um, as a kid, I had been um, kind of, I was never short. I'm still tall, but I'd always been kind of scrawny, and didn't play sports well. Didn't hate them. I mean, would have played them with the opportunity, but just didn't do that well. Um, so I didn't get along good. And it's not that I didn't try. I didn't get along good with other boys at all. I was always sort of left out. God bless him. There was a kid that was friends with me and he was overweight. And so we kind of always seemed to, you know, you know, play together or whatever during recess or lunch. Um, so I was a kind of a funny kid. I was, that those boys that are sort of like that are at a loss, are sometimes more susceptible to predation by men, and that was the case with me. So I was abused when I was a boy by a Catholic priest, and
Do you think
no,
that's I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
no,
just wanted to
no,
ask you
no,
that.
go whenever you want to.
Do you think that's because you're not receiving male approval from your peers, so you're looking for anything?
Yes, yeah, and I didn't have that at home either. So yeah, that was something that yeah, I was looking. I wouldn't say I was looking for, but if it presented itself as something I'd accept, so I did, and that did mess me up. I think I still would have been messed up anyway because I think there's certain factors that will make some boys have a propensity towards homosexuality. I mean, sexual abuse is definitely one of them, but sort of lack of male affirmations another, and then um, I would say a difficult relationship with your father is also one. I had all three of those going on, so I think if the abuse hadn't occurred, I probably would have still had problems. But I mean, it certainly didn't help. So, so like in the late '70s, early '80s. This is before all the AIDS stuff started happen. But I mean, certainly homosexuality um, um, was more visible, especially in the Bay Area. So, like I really liked the Village People. People kind of laugh about that now, but um, I did, I liked them and I bought their records, and of course they were, gay guys, and so by the time I would say in high school, I was pretty much convinced that I was gay. So didn't have a lot of guy friends, had a lot of not not girlfriends, but friends who were girls.
Mhm.
You see that a lot with with young people who are later identify as gay. So hated high school, and I would say got teased not a ton, but a good amount. So when I graduated, I wanted to go to, you know, the gay neighborhood in San Francisco and, be there. So, which is the Castro. So that's where I went. So I was, 18, 19 years old and ended up there. That was a bad year. 1988 is when I graduated from high school and when I came out there, but because that's where by then the AIDS epidemic was really bad. It was really
Okay,
surging.
okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
who's that?
It's my
Oh,
dog.
he's a cutie. He's a cutie. What
He-
is he?
he's a pit bull.
Wow.
Yeah.
You do you like that breed?
Oh yeah, I love him.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been around him for a long time.
Okay.
Boogie. Okay, Boogie. Okay, I know I'm talking to somebody and it's not you. He's
Oh, I'm
jealous.
sorry.
No, it's okay. He does this. If he can get in my office whenever I'm on a podcast, he'll do this.
No, no, no. Will he just sit there and watch, or does he have to?
Oh
Does
no,
he?
he'll try to climb on me. He's
Oh,
gonna lick the skin off my fingers. It's okay.
oh,
Go ahead.
okay, okay. And uh, oh, So, that was a pretty bad time. As opposed to now, back then it wasn't cool to be gay and to come out as gay. But I did. So, uh, at first I was pretty happy there because um uh young people that, and I understand why young people that are f- feel like they need to go in that direction. I understand why they do, because if they grow up um um believing that they're sort of an outsider or not accepted, when you go in to that community, you know, you're not going to find 100% acceptance, but you'll find quite a bit. You'll find people that will support you pretty much no matter what you're into, you know. So, I found that too. The problem is with young guys that go out and come out. A lot of times you get preyed upon by older men. That's just kind of what happens. So that happened a lot with me. So I was there from 11 years, so 1988 to 99. And I mean, everything that you could, get into, I got into: drugs, pornography, prostitution. I don't know, anything else you could name.
Right.
So, a lot of health problems. And by the time I had been there for 10 years, I was pretty burned out, and uh, kind of left for dead. I hate to make it sound dramatic, but uh, it wasn't good. So what I was heading towards wasn't good. So uh, I
Anybody who's hit
got
rock
I
bottom,
I got out. I got out.
I was just going to say anybody
Yeah,
who's hit rock bottom knows what it feels like to. It's like you feel like you're left for dead, whether you're dying or not, physically, emotionally, spiritually. You're on the downfall. You're on the decline, and
yeah.
everything's going.
Well,
You're going to tear down the world with you if you can.
you get it. Okay, okay. So, yeah, that's right. I just was sort of like, I didn't know what to do. So, I just crashed and burned. I said, well, I gotta do something. I gotta do something. So I just was like, I need to get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And I did. So, um, thank goodness my mom and dad, I was going to say who had always supported me, but see, that sounds wrong. Who My mom and dad, who had always, um, loved me, but didn't support what I was doing. So, I went and got their help. But I had friends too that helped me a lot too. And but not friends who were in that life because they couldn't, they had their own problems. So uh I just got out and I was just starting to rebuild my life. A lot of that at the time had to do with the Catholic Church, um, which is strange. But I had tried so many other, like, um, spiritual stuff, New Age, Eastern stuff.
Mm.
Um, I don't know, you name it. Everything. I tried everything. You name it. Paganism. I mean, there's nothing I didn't try. I can't think of anything. Um, So I don't know. I was just I just kind of go, well, I'll give Catholicism a try again. Um, I don't know why I didn't. Well, one of the reasons was when it just kind of came to me although I thought about it before, but um, when I used to go home, sometimes for Easter or Christmas or whatever, and my mom and dad still went to church. So, and then they dragged me. Well, they said you had to go. So I went, and there was a priest there that I thought was good, and I remembered him, and I thought he was kind of interesting. I thought maybe I'll go talk to him, and he was good. So he did help me out a lot. Um, so yeah, he did. So how's that?
Oh, that's good. That's perfect. So, so
I
you,
mean, I could have had more detail, but that's just kind of like the arc.
yeah, no, that works. That works fine. So one thing you said was whenever you entered this lifestyle and you had moved and entered into this lifestyle that you were accepted.
Mm,
And that's something I noticed um, is that when I was kind of a I was always kind of a quiet kid, kind of a loner,
mm,
um,
mm,
you
mm,
know, and I fell in with like I'm a I'm huge into like metal and
mm.
that kind of subculture of music, and I fell in with a lot of people who did a lot of drugs. And that's one thing you find with these people that are burning in passions like homosexuality or drug abuse or whatever is they're willing to accept you as long as you
Mm.
participate and tell them everything they're doing is okay,
That's true. Yeah.
right? It's like as long as you co-sign everything they do, it's like, oh yeah, hey,
Mm.
you can hang out with me all day long, you know, as long as you're having as much fun as I am, you know.
That's true.
And
That's true.
so getting out of a situation that is consuming you and
You give
because
up a lot. Yeah. You give up a lot. You give
you
up your
have to
friends.
you have to it's the only way you have to like just cut it off completely and
It's
it
tough.
yeah it is
It sucks. That sucks.
it's like becoming a new person, you know,
Mm-hmm.
altogether. A-
Mm-hmm.
and you feel alone whenever you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that doesn't get talked about enough, and I think it's very important that we talk about it. And we had talked beforehand about why I wanted to talk to you about this stuff is people don't understand that there's a big movement, especially in society today, to promote um, homosexuality or
Mm-hmm.
transgenderism or
Mm-hmm.
any number of things. I've even seen people defending pedophilia. I mean, I've seen all kinds of weird stuff out there,
Yeah.
and there from people that have been caught up in these lifestyles and destroyed their lives and gotten away from it, they can tell you, okay, this is what it does to a person emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Ultimately, it will affect you physically. And people don't want to hear the hard truths about the negative sides of these passions, about chasing these lifestyles. They think it's all fun and games, and they want to look at a pride parade and say, "Oh, look how fun that is." And look, they're just enjoying themselves. It's all just fun. And it's like these people are the reason these people get in your face if you disagree with them and scream at you and have a nervous breakdown is not because they are happy with their life,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
right? These people are miserable,
Yeah.
and I they cling to this lifestyle like I and like an idol.
But what else do they have?
It's a form of idolatry.
Yeah, I was there. I was there. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, I get a little embarrassed when talk about, I don't talk about my life real often. I get a little embarrassed 'cause it's kind of like, oh, well, went through all these horrible things and then I got through it and I survived and oh, look at me. But, you know, I was very weak and it was just through the grace of God that I'm here. It didn't really have anything to do with me. It had a lot to do with the people around me that helped me and our Lord Jesus Christ. So, it doesn't. have anything to do with me, but my heart goes out to people who do get involved in those things because so many of them come, at a loss. I mean, what else do they have? They don't have anything. I mean, and not everybody, like accelerates like I did so fast and so high and then crashes so quickly.
Right.
Some people just it's more gradual, and then sometimes they kind of, just sort of cruise along, but I mean everybody's different. But um it is difficult. I mean, what I see a lot of people do that do contact me is they have, one foot in, one foot out. And that's tough because I don't think you can do it that way. I mean, you really do have to cut yourself off. And that's hard because like you were saying, um, I mean, I don't know about, I mean, in the gay community, I mean, the drug culture is a part of it, but I don't know how that kind of works if it's standalone. But I mean, when I was gay, everything in my life was connected to gay. My friends were gay. I lived in a gay neighborhood. I went to gay clubs. I mean, for the most part, I read like gay magazines. I mean, everything was just, gay movies. So it's like if I'm leaving that, I'm literally leaving everything. And
Your,
then
your
then the,
entire persona was tied up into that.
yeah, well, my your identity too. So what the hell are you supposed to do? So you don't, it's scary. So most people, and I get why they do it, they just stay and try to figure it out and try to work it out where they are. And I mean, that's where a lot of guys started being like, well, I'm going to settle down with one guy. I'm still going to live in the neighborhood and sort of do what I was doing before, but maybe that'll fix it. I mean, for the most part, it doesn't. But I mean, people still keep trying to make it work. And I I couldn't because I had tried all that stuff. I tried being married. And it just didn't work. It didn't work. You're still trying to put, a round peg in a square hole. It just didn't work.
Mhm.
I couldn't force it. And because a lot of people I knew in that life died, and either AIDS or drug overdoses, or I mean, I knew people that had HIV and died of drug overdoses. It just went on and on. And I would often think, well, why, why did they never reach that, or like you said, hit rock bottom, or why didn't they ever have a moment where they thought, maybe I need to do something else? But sometimes it's sad. Life doesn't work that way, and you don't get that chance. Maybe they would have. I think they would have eventually, but sometimes you take a hit that's too big and you die.
We live in a world
You
right
know?
now. Well, I mean, you're told these people are constantly told that you were born this way. There's nothing you can do about it.
Oh, shush.
So for some of them, I'm sure the part of the reason they never considered to leave the lifestyle is because they didn't think they had anything outside of the lifestyle, that they didn't have a choice but to live in that lifestyle.
That's true. Um, but I think even among those people who say are because I was there too. I was even when I was left and was questioning a lot of things. I still believe that I had been born that way and God made me that way. But that even though that was the case, there's other things that I needed to do to be healthy. But I- um, I just think when there's there's something called trauma bonding, I just think when you get so many people together that have been traumatized in childhood, that the the dysfunction just it creates it's created and it just feeds upon itself. So you have so many people that are promiscuous or taking drugs or having real mental problems, depression, suicidal, whatever, that it doesn't seem strange. That's kind of bad because I remember when, well, it's not kind of bad, it's really bad. I remember when I was kind of new and out and just having discussions with people. And, sometimes people are honest, you know, without even knowing that they're being honest. And it's kind of like, well, somebody sexually abused me. And they didn't say it that way. That's stupid. They would be like, well, I was in the Boy Scouts and an older man I had sex with him, or a priest had sex with me, or a man had sex with me when I was a child. And I'm like, well, that's weird.
Mm,
I'm like, that's not good. But to them, because you're among people who have all these same experiences, it becomes kind of normalized.
mm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, one of the things that I wonder is, do you let me see if I can, it's like a chicken and an egg thing. I guess
Mhm.
I'm thinking of. So did you find yourself attracted to men before choosing the lifestyle, or did you choose the lifestyle because of looking to fill the hole that was had been left within you due to the trauma, and you developed the attractiveness to men?
I should say with me and with every gay guy I ever knew, that the attraction didn't start as sexual. It started out as an attraction to like male affection.
Mm, yeah,
And yeah, it doesn't. That's why a lot of I remember, like, especially the boomer gay guys, they had a lot of um, they were kind of obsessed with early TV westerns because there was so much male camaraderie and male affection there. And so it starts out that way, but which isn't a bad thing.
right.
Like a young boy, wants affection from their father. That's where they should get it. Or a girl wants affection or acceptance and affirmation from her mother. Same
Mm,
thing.
right.
And if you don't get it, you're going to look for it somewhere else. And then, especially in puberty, it, the desire for that sort of uh, 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 companionship becomes sexual. And then it gets twisted. It gets twisted around. So,
Mm,
I mean, a boy who has a good relationship with his father is not going to be gay.
yeah.
Now, then I'll have gay people all the time say, "I had a good relationship with my father," but there's other weird stuff going on in their life that are really weird, bad sort of, you know, um, codependent relationship with their mom or something. So,
Well,
it's
and then,
complicated.
it's even more complicated today because it's like children are being told that it's almost like virtuous to be gay as opposed to being, straight, you know, in
I don't
modern
know. It's
society.
it's weird now because the gay stuff is kind of passé now. They want to be trans and non-binary and all that other weird stuff. But
I think they did
yeah.
that because they don't want to be gay. Who's that I heard say that
Hmm.
the the whole transgender movement is actually homophobic because it's convincing perfectly reasonable, healthy gay men to cut off their appendages and call themselves a woman.
That's tough. That's tough. I haven't thought about it. I don't know why. Um, Hmm. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's, I mean, obviously that's just speculation. That would
No, no,
definitely
no,
be a
but
different conversation.
no, but I'd like to, yeah, I'd like to, I don't know. I think I still think the number of trans people is really small. I just think it gets a lot of attention. And I don't think I don't think it's as widespread as people think it is. I don't. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
No, I agree. I think that it's very in vogue to say something like I'm non-binary, and there's no
Yeah.
really commitment to doing anything if you just call yourself non-binary.
Yeah.
I remember one of my children, whenever he was younger, he was in high school, he told me, I'm pansexual. I was like, you don't even know what you are, dude. Like,
Oh
what are you
dear.
talking about? And no, he's
They
perfectly straight. He was just trying to fit in.
they
He's
heard
just
yeah, they heard it somewhere.
yeah.
Because I haven't done ministry out in San Francisco in the LGBT, you know, scene much anymore. But what I since you brought this up, I'll just say it. When I haven't noticed a big uptake of like, I mean, because there were always guys that wanted to be, girls,
Mm,
and and there were always a few of those, and there was a route that they could take where, that would be sort of possible. But what I have noticed that I never saw, when I was doing all that stuff, over gosh, a long time ago, over 25 years ago, is that the girls who wanted to be guys. I had never seen that. And you'd always seen like butch lesbians
mm,
who looked who had a lot of like male affectation, who kind of looked that way, but they hadn't done any bodily augmentation. That's new.
mm.
And that's weird. But
Yeah.
other than that, no. I haven't seen a lot more guys that want to be girls. There are always those, but you know, so the
So
stuff with the stuff with the women is strange.
you mentioned that you would experiment with paganism, New Ageism,
Oh yeah.
all these different things. And
Oh yeah.
I'm reading Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future again. Um, and
That's a great
so
book.
yeah, I think this is my second time reading it. Might be my third, but I know it's definitely at least my second. And that seems to have been kind of a trend in California in the 70s, probably going into the 80s and 90s. Was it was it rampant, more rampant, let's say, in the gay culture and the gay community from what you saw, or was it pretty much about the same?
Yeah, that's complicated. Well, if you look at, I love like historical context. If you look at like the the burgeoning like gay sort of movement, or the gay liberation movement in the United States, I mean, San Francisco was a big center for that,
Mm,
and it was, around kind of. I always kind of use the year 1967 because that was the summer of love. So you had, the sexual revolution with the hippies and the counterculture and all that stuff, and that was in Haight-Ashbury, which is, for people that's been to San Francisco, it's a neighborhood. It's right by Golden Gate Park, but not that far from the Haight-Ashbury's to Castro. So you had, a lot of people moving into Haight-Ashbury, and you had a lot of the gay guys moving to the Castro, which is very close. But at the same time, you had like the Manson family was around at that time. The Hare Krishnas, which Father Seraphim Rose talks about, because you got to this is a crazy thing about Father Seraphim Rose. I mean, he was here in San Francisco at that time. I think he left in well, I was born in 69. I think he left right around there, 69, 70 is when he went up to Platina. So he, saw this stuff with the Hare Krishnas and all the cults. And then you had like the People's Temple with Jim Jones and all this weird stuff. You had Patty Hearst with the Symbionese Liberation Army. And so you had all that stuff going on at the same time. And you did see it sort of affect. I think the effect was more profound in, let's say, like the Haight-Ashbury with the hippies, because if you just look at the Beatles with the Maharishi and all that stuff, they got into a lot of that Eastern mysticism and the occult,
Mhm.
and where sounds terrible to say this, but I mean, with the gay guys, it was just more of a hedonism kind of, if you want to call it a religion. It was just sort of libertine decadence hedonism. And the I mean, one of the interesting things about being in that world is a lot of the guys did grow up with a certain religious affiliation, a lot of Catholic, a lot of Jewish, but I mean everything in between. People from the Bible Belt were there, and for the most part those guys just wanted to like throw off whatever religious upbringing they had. And I mean, what they replaced it with, was just sex. And yeah, I have to say, you kind of saw that start to change. I remember not so much, but I think AIDS changed everything for a lot of people, and they started to to question things. I remember in the late '80s, the early '90s, there were more people that were sort of on a spiritual quest. I remember, I mean, a few people in general. I remember this is when Oprah Winfrey was popular, and she said some things I think that appealed to a lot of gay guys, which was what sort of that many paths sort of route, to God. That there are all these different ways to, experience
Mm-hmm.
spirituality. And I got into that because that's kind of what the new age was about. Because at that time I was living in Berkeley, and there were just like a lot of new age stores. I wrote about this in my book, and it appealed to me because you could go in and there would be like Buddhist things, Christian things, Hindu. It was like all this stuff kind of like mashed together. And back then it was called, like Joseph Campbell was around. He had a big influence on me, his books, and it was all about like the power of myth and all this stuff. And now that's kind of called like symbolism, and it's kind of like this the same grift.
Yeah.
But so that I got into that and I liked that. And I remember a lot of people were into that too. It's kind of like that thing where people will say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. So it's like a lot of people were not part of an organized religion like church, but they had like spiritual beliefs that were very new age. I remember Marianne Williamson, who's still around. She was kind of big at that time too, because that's sort of what she taught was like God, sort of whatever it is that you're into. And I liked that, but that also kind of doesn't work. It's very flaky. So because I think I was raised Italian and Catholic, even though it wasn't traditional and it wasn't ritualized, I think people instinctively have kind of that desire for something transcendent.
Mm.
Like if you want to call it a ceremony or whatever, a liturgy or a ritual, you know, there's a desire for that. And that what's kind of weird was it looking back, when I was out of that whole place, is that a lot of things, especially in the gay male world, were like these strange sort of inversions of a Christian. And I haven't been I wasn't the first person to write about this. Other people have, but it's kind of like where the club or the bar or the disco or whatever became like a church, and there's certain ritual around that that takes place, and that sort of that fills that vacuum. But of course, it's empty. I wrote about that in my book. It's kind of an empty, hollow sort of tabernacle that you're kneeling in front of.
Mm,
So you know I mean, a lot like Father Seraphim. A lot of this stuff just leads to nihilism, and um, but people, I mean, I get why you do it. People are grasping at straws. So
mm. Well, it sounds okay. So one of the
that sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it?
well, not really.
Okay.
I think I kind of get it, and I just want to run this by you and see
Okay.
if I'm catching this correctly. It sounds to me like entering into the homosexual lifestyle, entering into that culture that you had entered into, is a lot like being an alcoholic or a drug addict. That you're almost that you're enslaved to this external activity,
Mm,
whatever that may be, and you're you're chasing a feeling that maybe you had experienced or has been or was promised to you at some point, or you had this ideal that, but you're chasing that, whatever that
yep,
is, that euphoria, and you're looking for that feeling, that euphoria, that experience to bring you peace. And when it doesn't bring you peace, then you start experimenting with drugs. You start experimenting with new ageism. You start experimenting with all these other things because you're just trying to find that inner peace. You're
you
trying
got
to
it.
figure out how to shut down the demons that won't let you go, that have you in their grips. You're just trying to silence them.
You got it.
And this is something I've dealt with, so I think I got it pretty close.
Yeah.
Um,
You got
and,
it. You got it.
okay.
And in the gay community, a gay male community, a lot of drug use revolves around, let's say, party drugs or drugs that are not so much inebriating,
Mm.
but drugs that are enhancing.
Hmm.
That's like
Yeah,
there's a lot of
ecstasy and
Special K, ecstasy, a lot
mm,
of those things, meth, things that enhance, the experience.
yeah, yeah. And see, with me, it was always a lot of downers. So
Mm,
alcohol,
mm,
marijuana, even mushrooms, I found would relax me.
okay.
And it was all just trying to get my body to come down and just not be so amped and full. It's not even full of energy, but I'm always like just jittery and, you know, all that, and just trying to shut it down and close that door and close that window. And I nurtured like you nurtured yours through homosexuality. I nurtured that through writing, and I was
Mm,
feeding that. And it got to a point with me where I was writing so often I would wake up in the middle of the night, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd pop out of bed and I'd have to write, and I wasn't sleeping. And so what I started doing is I started drinking or smoking pot or doing these other things to shut that off, to turn it off. It
that'll
was the
work.
only way I could get it to shut off. And it got to a point to where it was like it didn't come in words, and it's not like voices. I try to explain this to people. It's like images. You get an image and it's like you see something and you're like, ooh, I got to explain that. I got to express that. Whatever that is, I have to express that. So then I would write like a little short story or a poem or something like that. But it was like something outside of me coming into me and just taking over, like grabbing me and putting me in this position to where I had no choice but to feed it. And the more I fed it, the more it came, and the more it came, and the more it
Yeah.
came, until I turned to alcohol. I turned to marijuana. I turned to these drugs, just try to like numb it, shut it up, you know? And so I feel like what you went through is similar to that. You were looking for that peace, trying to shut it off, whatever was going on. You were just trying to find that inner peace, like I was trying to find that inner peace. And whereas you turned to homosexuality due to circumstances that had happened in your life, I turned to alcohol, I turned to marijuana, I turned to, mushrooms, whatever it was, and just to silence mine. So it's I don't think it's all that different. And this is what these lifestyles, these lifestyle choices, living like this, people call this freedom, right? But it doesn't feel free when you're in the middle of it, does it?
No,
Like I've never
no,
heard an
it's like
alcoholic being like, "Thank God I'm so free," you know? You know,
no, it's a form of no, it's a form of slavery.
yeah, you've voluntarily enslaved yourself to your passions, to this vice, this external vice that has a hold of you, and that you begin to nurture and you begin to love. And maybe it's not a big deal at first, but like you said, eventually you're going to hit that arc. Eventually it's going to consume you. Eventually it's going to start ruining relationships around you. It's going to start ruining you.
Well, the par I agree with everything you said. The parallel between, let's say, substance abuse and homosexuality is I think there is always the hope with the addict that the substance that we're using is going to make everything okay. But it really it doesn't. It leaves it actually leaves you emptier than before. And I think with I mean because I think every young person that g goes into the homosexual realm, they're not like I'm gonna have lots of sex and stuff. I think you go into it. I mean, I certainly did. You go into it initially sort of I'm going to find a friend or I'm going to find somebody to be with or somebody to love. And it's, it's, well, it's, it's biological, but I mean, it's also spiritual because two men and two women, there's not that compatibility. So like I was saying earlier, you keep trying to make it work. It doesn't work. And I think instinctively it. It doesn't. So you keep trying it. I need a different person or this or that. It just it doesn't work. And I mean drugs are that way too because it feels good for a while
Mm-hmm.
and then it sort of fades. It fades. I mean in when you're having sex, that moment is blissful, but then later it's like okay, it's whatever issues that I brought with me from my childhood, whether it's abuse, abandonment, neglect, whatever, whatever that baggage that I brought with me is still there. And the
Mm-hmm.
sex didn't change that. Just like the drugs aren't going to change that. Usually it makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
But so the fundamental problem is not addressed. It's not addressed in homosexuality. It's not addressed in alcoholism. It's not addressed in drug addiction. It's just not addressed. And that's the problem. That's why I mean within the gay community, there's very high rates of mental illness, much higher than heterosexuals. And people keep trying to explain their way out of it. Well, it's because of this, because they weren't accepted when they were kids, or they're being discriminated against, or they feel like, they're a minority or whatever. And they keep trying to come up with excuses why gay people are not doing well mentally. It's because, this is my opinion, it's because there is a wound there that's not being healed. It's not being healed. It's not even being tended to. And I mean you see that with a lot of people that get into to drugs and it results in homelessness and mental illness because there's some kind of I people think people get tired of hearing about abuse. I think some of that I see that online and social media. I think it happened with the kind of with the Me Too movement that I was like, oh, believe all women. And so many people were saying, well, I was abused and this happened and that happened and it was legitimate. And I think I don't know if people got tired of it, but you can't underestimate, you know, the consequences of childhood trauma and how it affects people and how it can it can really damage the rest of their life.
Yeah. Well,
And that's not treating everybody like a baby or a victim. It's just the way it is.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's on, and well, you know, one of the things that I don't know if you've ever addressed this, and I'll just ask it, and if we can talk about it as much as you want to. There was that situation with Milo a couple of years ago where he had mentioned that the priest was
remember
the victim. Remember that the way he had put it?
very well.
Now I had heard at that around that time that it is common in the gay community for homosexual men that have been abused to kind of romanticize that abuse and
Hmm.
and that maybe that was a way for him to cope with that pain. Is this like a fair assessment of this?
Very good. That is very good. I remember that interview, but I remember on top of that that George Takei, who was Sulu in Star Trek, and I'm kind of a Star Trek fan.
Mm,
And I remember that he had done an interview with Howard Stern where he had said that in the Scouts, an older man had had sex with him, and he was kind of like, "Oh, well, I don't remember what he said, and I don't want to paraphrase him, but he had said it wasn't abuse,
mm,
and that happens a lot. That's very, very typical, So
yeah.
it's part of the grooming process where people were groomed, and it's also, I think, part of gay culture where there's sort of a where there's a conception of initiation, and this goes way back,
Mm,
because if you look at the even the ancient Greeks, there was that that I don't know what the hell to call it, that sort of cultural I hate the word tradition, sort of that cultural accepted practice of older men with boys.
hmm Yeah, it was,
So it
and Plato used to say that Plato used to say that it was impossible for a man to love a woman because a man can only love his equal.
okay,
And so
you
there
know,
was, so it was like you said, it was very culturally kind of a norm at that time.
and
For,
unfortunately, I've kind of argued that now that I'm not Roman Catholic anymore, I've kind of argued that some of that persisted in Roman Catholicism, in monasticism, in the priesthood, and to this day, and it's why there's been so much abuse.
mm,
But it's certainly in the gay community where they have this, I can't even say the word, but where they have this sort of twink phenomena, which is, sort of a attractive young boys. It's quite sick. So,
yeah,
but this stuff is not addressed. Forget it.
yeah.
Forget it.
So
Everything's perfectly normal on that side of the fence.
at some point, like you eventually you realized what this lifestyle was doing to you. You realized how devastating it was to you spiritually, emotionally, physically. I mean, like you said, you were ill. We
It wasn't that profound.
well, sounds pretty profound.
It was more no, it was kind of like you're giving me more credit than I deserve. It was kind of like I don't think I want to die like a junkie. It
Mm,
was kind of that kind of thing because
mm,
by then a lot of people had died, and I was like with like a needle stuck in their arm, and I was kind
gotcha.
of like, I don't. That's not too cool. I don't want to go that way.
Right. I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
What I was going to ask is, when you did you have like let's say I guess the best way to say is like withdrawal symptoms when you left.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
I mean,
It,
chemical, everything.
yeah.
That was torture. And of course, I'm an idiot. I don't know anything. I just go home and get in bed and sweat it out.
Mm,
I just stopped cold turkey.
yeah.
Everything.
Right. And so this was not only the homosexuality, this was drugs, this was
Yeah.
all kinds of things.
Yep.
So,
It was tough.
and you went back to the Catholic Church at this time. Can you kind of explain how that worked out and why you ended up leaving the Catholic Church?
Yeah, I stayed for 20 years. I told people the day I walked back into the Catholic Church was the day I started to leave. Because I was so dis disappointed. It was pretty bad.
Mm,
Um, the church was very gay, was not, it was very difficult to find a spiritual direction that was willing to push back against the gay stuff because most of it was really accommodating. Even what was so sick was that even considering what I had been through physically, because I mean, I was mentally screwed up and I was physically screwed up, but I mean, my body was messed up. And there were a lot of priests who was like, the gay stuff is okay. It even got down to priests were like, you need to settle down. And I was like, Father, I've done that. But I mean, you do find, and it's usually in traditional Catholicism. And for people that don't know what that is, that's like, Latin Mass, traditional Catholicism. I did find priests that were, of course, saying, well, homosexuality is not a good idea. Um, you need to do something to, well, no, they didn't say that. I mean, that was part and parcel with the problem in Catholicism is it was sort of like just, be chaste, which is fine. That's like telling a drug addict, don't do drugs, just say no. I
mm,
mean, that's stupid. It's not going to work. I mean, there needs to be a more holistic approach. I mean, people need to, address stuff. That's why AA can be, quite good, is that I think it does tend to not force people, but it does tend to encourage people to dig deeper,
mm,
and I didn't find that in Catholicism. I had to find that myself because I think when I had a lot of time in the Catholic Church to think. So when I was, pondering a lot of the past, specifically why a lot of people that I knew died and I didn't. I was trying to figure out why all this stuff we're talking about. Why was I gay? Why did all this stuff happen to me? Why did I go this way? Why did I go that way? And I did get into the psychological aspects of it, and that was all outside of the church, and that helped me a lot.
mm,
Catholicism, well, when I started to address the issues of abuse in the church, things went downhill real fast for me. There's a lot of resistance there in the church. It's sad even to this day because certainly everybody knows it's gone on,
mm-hmm.
but within the church, there's a wall of silence there to this day, and it's like I, I can't be a part of this. I mean, I'm a victim of it. I can't be silent. And to stay in the Catholic Church and to be in good standing, you have to shut up. Even if you're a victim, you have to well, especially if you are, you have to shut up. And I was
Mm,
like, I can't do it anymore. I'm leaving. I don't want to support this. And it got to the point where I didn't believe in it anymore. Because by then I was going to the Orthodox Church and I was like, I don't believe that this man that's elected to rule over everyone is chosen by God. He's just some guy and he's corrupt as hell. So it's like I
Mm.
don't believe it. I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
I believe in Jesus, and I did kind of the home church thing for a while, like a lot of gay people do. I'm going to be spiritual, but not religious.
Hmm.
But then, like when Sunday came around, I was like, I want to go to a church. I want to be in a church. I can't. So started going to the Orthodox Church. I was like, hey, there's no rainbow banners here. This is great. Where do I sign? Where do I sign up? And
How did you
everybody,
how did you find
everybody
out
was
about orthodoxy?
through. it- I give credit probably to Father Seraphim Rose, although that when I was in San Francisco, I was aware of the cathedral on Geary Street because
Hmm.
I'd driven by it probably 1,000 times, but I had never gone in it. So I mean, sort of in the back of my head, I knew that there was something there, but I wasn't sure what it was. But then I just started hearing about Father Seraphim Rose, about his struggles and what he'd been through, and I was like, that's kind of cool. Kind of reminds me of me.
Hmm.
And I just started reading about him. I was like, ooh, I like this. I like this.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. He's an interesting guy.
I love him dearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When you when you look at your life now compared to what it was, what how do you how do you feel about where you are as far as are you free now?
Y- Yeah. I would say so. I'm kind of burned. I tell people I'm kind of burned out. I don't have a lot of desires or passions.
Well, it's not
I
even
really
that's not
don't.
even what I'm asking about. I just do you
Free of the flesh or
I'm just asking,
free.
do you feel like you live in like a free lifestyle now? Like not even not even necessarily because you don't have a lot of passions or anything like that. Just the fact that you're not so enslaved to that lifestyle and everything that came along with it.
Yeah, it took a long time. I would say yes. Yeah, I would say 10 years ago, no.
Yeah.
Um yeah, not. I mean, here now I'm in my 50s. Yeah, no. The probably the biggest struggle for me is probably anger is the biggest struggle for me.
Mm. Yeah. I think we all have a little
Because
bit of that.
there's so much injustice, and I I have that I have that desire to see justice
Mm.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. I I understand. One of the things I started asking myself whenever I started having feelings like that is like, do I have the discernment to tell the difference between justice and vengeance?
Mm,
And I've just come to the conclusion that I do not have that discernment, so I just try to keep my mouth shut. Because I find that whenever I think something's going to be just, it turns out that I'm coming at it from the wrong perspective, and it's usually comes out as vengeance, you know. So I just try to keep my mouth shut about
mm,
stuff like that anymore. But I do understand what you're saying, especially with
that's a
your
tough one. Wow.
with your past and having lived through that and knowing that nothing was done about it, and actually the only thing that was done about it was they told you not to talk about it. And I think that is absolutely unjust and unfortunately, and this may sound insensitive, but you know where I'm coming from on this particular perspective. That's a cross. Yeah.
I think not only are people I mean, because the majority of people who go that direction are abused. I mean, not only are they, I mean, silence is certainly part of it, but they're told that, the abuse never took place and this just is the way you are. And it's so much more dark and evil to to manipulate people that way, especially children.
Mm,
Because I mean, when I came out in 1988 at age 18, that was considered really young. I was like,
mm,
wow, because so many guys, especially the boomers, I mean, a lot of the boomers like got married to women and had kids, and then like, which I could never figure out, and then like later they came out as gay.
mm.
Whereas, I mean, now these you have like children who say they're gay or they're trans or whatever, and it's like really awful. So, I mean, they're being abused, but then the the program or whatever, or the lie or the deception is being implanted very young,
Yeah.
and it's taking root because like in the culture, I mean, when I was a teenager, there wasn't really a place for a gay teenager or whatever to be, but now there's sort of a place where they can be groomed, and it's horrible. So,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I don't even know what I was trying to say, but yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
So
there really is a spirit of the times.
it's much, 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 much worse. I know it always seems to be getting worse, but it does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I I
I
think
don't.
I think it's just the feeding of it. It's like it's almost like it's almost like sacrifice, right? You just feed children to it.
I think so. Yeah, I can't wrap my head around it. I can't. I guess if I sat long enough, I could.
Mm. Yeah.
I can't. That's pretty dark. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's dark.
it's a dark place to go.
Yeah, I don't want to, but people are, the more acceptance, socially and politically, that sort of this movement has gained, it hasn't resulted in peace or contentment, which you can't measure. I mean, it hasn't resulted in health or happiness. It just hasn't. It's gotten worse. The mental illness gets worse, the suicide rates gets worse among these people. The drug addiction gets worse. Although they've kind of clamped down on HIV and AIDS a bit, the other stuff gets worse. The Hep C and all the other stuff gets worse. So it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
The what they promised hasn't, like, oh, we get gay marriage and everything's gonna be just wonderful. And actually, it's gotten worse because the all the trans stuff and all this stuff with kids really started to hit after Obergefell in 2015. That's when it really started to come out. It was kind of like yeah, it's like a demonic unleashment of hell.
I one of the things that struck me as funny, and we can kind of wrap up on this. And I let's say funny as an ironic, not funny as an haha necessarily,
You know?
but was when the whole monkeypox epidemic came out,
I remember that.
and is- I don't remember who. I don't know if it was the mayor of San Francisco or the governor of California. I don't remember who it was, but somebody came out and said, "Why don't we just like, why don't you try to limit your sexual partners?" And all I heard was that's homophobic. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like it's a simple like, yeah, that might be a good idea, or screw you, pal. I'm gonna do what I want. Like there's nothing homophobic about saying maybe it would be a good idea to limit your sexual partners. It didn't seem like that absurd to me to say that. And I was like, y'all just fought for gay marriage. Like, so why don't you just come out and say, well, yeah, Of course, we're limiting our sexual partners. We're getting married now. We're not out there doing all this crazy partying like you think happens in the homosexual community. It's not that
No, they're
fun.
not.
We're ordinary, just regular family people like everybody else. But that's not what they said. They came out immediately and said, limit our sexual partners. How dare you be homophobic? It was just one of the wildest things I'd ever heard.
Well, they knew from the demographics that the monkeypox was hitting gay men.
Mm,
So I mean, they knew this was AIDS, 2.0. They knew that they knew that it reminded me because in the 80s in San Francisco they had the bathhouses and they were Dianne Feinstein, to her credit, she was maritime. She wanted to close them, and of course the gay men they kind of used the homophobic card too at that time and saying, well, you can't close the bathhouses because this is where we congregate and everything. But they did anyway. But that's the pink elephant in the room. And they've done studies in San Francisco among so-called married or monogamous partnered men, and they're not monogamous. They're always open. They're always open
yeah.
relationships because somebody, and I mention him in every interview I practically do, is Randy Schultz, the man that God rest his soul, that wrote and the band played on. He had a profound moment, even though he was a gay activist, he had a profound moment in that book when he said that, this homosexual thing with two men is never going to work because men will always have sex. The thing that works in heterosexuality is women, because women are kind of like, no, they're like the stopgap. They're like,
Mm,
no, women aren't going to do what gay men do. Gay men have sex in a public lavatory. Women aren't going to do that. I knew female prostitutes that wouldn't do that
mm,
because it's just too low for them. So it's never going to work. They keep trying and it's never going to work. And I've said this to gay activists just to be kind of a jerk. But I say, what happens if there is some sort of societal collapse? Let's just say something happens. I don't know. And gay men are not able to access PrEP or Truvada or any of these pharmaceuticals which are preventing AIDS. The gay community among men will be wiped out in a few years.
yeah.
It just will be. It was on that way in the 90s where it was just going to be over because they were all dying
Hmm.
because they couldn't stop.
Right.
So we could go back to that very, very quickly. All these pharmaceuticals come from the Orient or from Asia anyway. What happens if they can't get them anymore?
Yeah.
They're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
But they don't want to think about that because they always think that, you know, bad things don't happen.
Well, like I said, it's like an addiction. It's when you're in the throes of that passion, when you're in the throes of being consumed by that thing, facts don't care. It don't matter. The facts.
I had blown a hole in my septum and I
Hmm.
kept doing, coke.
Hmm.
And there were there the gay guys know the risks, but they still do it anyway. It's
Hmm.
sort of the same thing. It's just like this is a big risk, but I'm gonna, hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep going.
YOLO.
They some people's rock bottom is pretty low.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say mine was fairly low.
Yeah.
I had to really kind of be knocking at the door of death. But man, some people are hardcore. They just, maybe it's stubbornness because I was pretty stubborn too. And it's like
Well,
they
and
just won't.
some people are
They
long
won't.
distance runners. You're a sprinter.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
you
That's it.
you were trying to get there as fast as possible. Uh,
Yeah. So I always tell people this because there's, especially in San Francisco, there's so many people that are mixed up in the life. And I tell their relatives who are just at their wits' end, I just said, you know what? Just keep praying and maybe, they'll come out of it. I came out of it kind of early. I was 29,
Mm,
going on 30. Some people, maybe they'll be older, maybe they'll be 50, 60, and they'll finally go, if they live that long, hopefully, then they'll say, hey, I gotta stop. I gotta stop. You know,
just keep praying
I
for them.
got friends that are still in that life. Yeah, they're still in that life.
Hmm.
But I hope one day. I think they will.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been over an hour. I really appreciated
That
this
was a lot. That
conversation.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah,
Plug away, plug whatever you got. I know you got your podcast. And you've done
I do.
some. You were just on Orthodox Ethos. What,
That
last
was
week?
cool.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
cool.
awesome.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Father Hirsch.
Hmm.
I love him. Yeah, my website is my name, so josephshambra.com. And then I do a blog. I've been lazy with the blog, but I still do it. And then I tried to do the podcasting. I mean, this is a podcast. It's hard to get guests. Everybody's
Hmm.
so busy.
Yeah.
So I would do more podcasting if I could. But and then I have that, and then I have my store too. So I've got my book and I've got some other stuff there. So
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I'm going to end the recording. I really enjoyed this.